Hey you, Meowkaiser coming at you today with a guide on Blade, just like an in-depth guide. I won't be covering too much on routing, but just more of a general introduction to what Blade is. Now, Blade is a mastery that is very well known for its strong, fast, epic weapons, epic being the purple weapons that you see in the game. Most of the Blade weapons in this game require 3 areas to finish, some of them even requiring as few as 2, depending on situation. Another thing that it is known for is dulling. Now, dulling is a mechanic where if you attack somebody that has Sword Stopper, they permanently decrease your stat attack of your weapon by -1. Basically, if you are running into somebody else who has a Sword Stopper in the lobby, you rush purple weapon, you basically can expect to have to build a second purple weapon, and if you don't, well, this happens. What do you mean? In any case, blades can be re-enhanced using Meteor Steel or Whetstone. Whetstone enhancing by +1 to a max of 30. This works on dulled weapons. It only works on your weapon that is equipped. And Meteor Steel with a 55% chance of nothing happening, 20% for a +1 enhancement, 15% for a +2, and 10% for a +4. There is no cap on this. It's basically free damage. Now, the strongest Blade characters as of right now are Kiara and Yuki, both of which start at D+. I've noticed most higher level players seem to prefer Yuki, mostly because he's a lot better at securing that first area, especially if he gets the first strike with Uchi-Otoshi. If he gets the first strike with Uchi-Otoshi at full health, he gains an extra 15 skill damage, and I believe he has an extra crit rate. Yeah, he has 50% attack and armor and critical chance by like 5%. I believe the base chance is 5%. So you have a 10% chance of just critting somebody right off the bat. In terms of viable blade starts, there's only actually a couple blade starts that are really going for it, excluding supplies, right? You usually see people going for either, let me find it, Monohoshizao. You see Santa Muerte, Hades Edge, and Sky Piercer. Most of the other ones aren't really worth rushing unless you get the right supplies for it. But in terms of how that goes, if you want to do Monohoshizao, you usually start Temple, because you can grab the katana, thick paper, and cloth, right? And then you can go over to Hospital, grab your hammer, your fountain pen, your alcohol, head over to Slums, grab some arm warmers for Sword Stopper later. You got your lighter for your alcohol, you got your scrap metal and then you just head over to Trail and you finish your weapon, right? Nice and fast. And also Hospital has a good amount of food. For Hades Edge, usually you see that as a Chapel or Cemetery start, because both Chapel and Cemetery have long swords. Chapel and Cemetery. And you can use the other steel necessary to make Hades Edge for, you can either do it for Steel Shield or Sheet Metal Armor, depending on what you want to do. There's a couple options out of this. You could save your steel for Steel Shield, and instead of making Crusader's Armor because you made Bishop's Cassock, you can instead try to get gold early and make Clergy's Cassock, so that you don't have to worry about that. But either way, you're going to have to make an extra gold, because usually you're either building your Clergy's Cassock or you build the Golden Bracelet into drop here. Technically, Sword of Shao John's an option, but we're not using Iron Sheets here. So that's something to keep in mind. The other 2 viable starts are Sky Piercer, which you usually see out of Forest. Because in Forest you want to grab the hatchet and the short spear. And you want to grab as many leathers as you can while you're here. And then you would head over to Temple to grab the spear handle, and then you would sit on Horse Guando for a little bit, and then you would finish, not Horse Guando, Halberd Axe for a little bit, then you would finish Horse Guando later in the game. This is a little bit unusual for a blade strategy because they usually want to rush their purple weapon, but with a lot of these blade/stab weapons, they're not typically very fast to rush. That's just something to keep in mind. It's the way that they keep Blade's sense of identity in the game. For Santa Muerte, usually it's just Lighthouse into Trail, where you pick up a spear handle, sometimes 2 if you can afford to carry it. Go for a Reaper's Sight, and then you head over your way to Trail. Since you made boiling water, you can make Oriental concoctions. and you want to pick up the Shamshir so that you can finish this Scimitar into Horus Guando into Santa Muerte. It's nice and fast. This one takes about 4 areas to finish usually, unless you decided to carry 2 spear handles, in which case it takes 3. But usually carrying 2 spear handles is really heavy on your inventory. Now, one of the things to be aware of when you're playing Blade is, since you are intending on making a second weapon in 90% of your games, you have to be aware of your RNG weapons, right? I'm going to talk about Axe of Pengu first, because Axe of Pengu is really special. So this is an RNG weapon that relies off of Mithril. It's actually the only Mithril weapon that Blade gets. It's Adamantium and Battle Axe. Now, the thing about this weapon is that it has a plus 9% defect chance for a total of plus 11%, right? However, when you destroy it, you get armor plus 20, recover plus 20 HP. Usually, the only time I ever see a high-level player go for Axe of Pengu is they got Mithril early on in the game, and they already got most of their build figured out, that it would be a waste for them to use that Mithril. So instead, what they do is they opt to make an Axe of Pengu really early on in the game, break it early so that they get extra plus 20 armor and plus 20 HP later in the game. And that plus 20 armor is really nice during the mid-game. During the late game, it tends to matter a lot less. The only other character who really cares about Axe of Pengu would be Sisela if you decide to play her Blade, but I mean, you can check out my Blade Sisela video, it's a meme. In terms of other RNG items, another thing that you have to be aware of is, where is it? I actually want to look at a blue weapon right now, Jeweled Sword. So if you ever find yourself an extra gemstone later in the game and you're just like, well, I can start making a second weapon, so like you're already full build, right? You can quickly go and make Jeweled Sword, and Jeweled Sword gives you a lot of access into a lot of very quick weapons. You can go for Harp, which is just off of Scimitar. You can go for, oh, is it really going to do this to me? Sorry. You can go for Hovud, which just needs glass pieces. You can go for Leviathan, which requires a true Samdifier. And you can go for 7-star sword if you just find a meteorite laying around. I've actually done this a couple times where it's just like, oh, there's just a meteorite. Okay, this is what's happening. But you wouldn't want to go for those RNG items if you do not get the gemstone later in the game when you want to make your second weapon. Other options include, like, for Vibroblade, for example. Now, I consider this an RNG weapon most of the time because you usually would not build this as a rush, right? Because animals have a chance to drop electronic parts as well as steel. So, like, if I am... So, I usually like to make my second weapon into Second Knight, right? Because of dulling. So usually what I do is if I see electronic parts or steel either on an animal or if it's just lying on the ground for whatever crazy reason, I will pick it up as my intention for a second weapon because that's a really quick motor and then knife is just super easy to get. So I consider this an RNG weapon. It's not technically RNG, but yeah. And then, well, you don't have to worry about this one. Plasma Sword is stupid to try to make. I did not want to click on that. I wanted to click on Divine Dual Swords. So basically the way this RNG weapon works is Masamune always starts at Temple. You should be aware if anyone brings Masamune outside of Temple. And then Muramasa is your RNG item. It gets dropped somewhere randomly at the start of the game. And the way that you remember this is that the blue one is the one that's always at Temple. You see the blue handle. And then the red handle is the one that's always at, is always random. So if you find the red one in your game, you're set for your second weapon, and you probably want to hold it. What else? Dragon Guando. If you find a Tree of Life, that's a really quick halberd axe into Dragon Guando. Real simple, real easy. Now, Blade has a couple options when it comes into dealing with Holy Blood, right? You could either just stick on Holy Blood and go for Dane's Leaf. This is a very high risk, high reward weapon because it gives you plus 8% damage when you take damage, right? But the flip side is that whenever you kill a player, you get plus 5 weapon attack on this and it stacks, right? So if you're really far ahead of the lobby and you get a free wick line, you should totally go for this weapon. It'll usually end the game right then and there, especially if you get a single kill. And like, if you get 2 or 3 kills, the game's over. What was it? Arcane Edge is pretty good if you don't think you're going to be able to get electronic parts. I usually build Arcane Edge if somebody was building, where is it? Bone Crushers, because Bone Crushers requires a lot of steel and electronic parts. Or if there was like a JP in the game, right? Because at that point, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make the engineered arcade motor, which requires electronic parts, and steel, which I might not be able to find at that point in the game because so much was used by either JP or whoever was making Bone Crushers, right? So Arcane Edge is a nice alternative. It does still require a steel, but that's not too bad. And what's the best way to compare this is, well, I mean, Blade gets a really easy plus 53 attack, and they don't even have to work that hard, whereas Hand has to go all the way. Hand's a meme. If you are not absolutely dominating the lobby, and you get Wickline in first night, you should go for Tachyon Blade, though. That is generally what you'll be going for in 90% of the games where you kill Wickline. And that should about cover it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Peace. Before I forget, I want to give a quick shout out to these guys who made this video possible. They helped a lot in making that clip where you saw me attacking with an incredibly low attack Monohoshizao. I hope to make other videos like this, and I'll see you guys in the future. Peace.